The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council stretched high above the gathered representatives, its walls shimmering with the light of distant stars. 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each group looking more worried than the last. The emergency session had been called after another devastating defeat, and everyone knew the news would be bad. Ambassador Kalara of the Zenthari Federation stood at the central speaking platform, her 6 arms trembling, as she held the datapad containing the latest reports. Her translator box converted her clicking language into the common galactic speech that everyone could understand. The silence in the chamber was heavy with dread. "The Outer Rim territories have fallen completely to the Voidborn forces," she announced, her voice barely steady. 17 star systems consumed in the past month alone. The enemy fleet continues to grow stronger with each victory, taking our technology and turning it against us. In the human delegation section, Ambassador John Carter sat quietly beside his aide Lisa Morgan. Their small area was tucked away in one of the less prominent spots, reflecting humanity's status as the newest members of the Galactic Council. Most of the other species barely acknowledged their presence, viewing humans as primitive newcomers who had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Carter watched the reactions around the chamber as more reports came in. The Altarians, tall beings with crystalline skin, whispered among themselves in their musical language. The reptilian Korthani delegation sat stone-faced, their warrior culture making them reluctant to show fear. The insect-like Zirathi representatives clicked their mandibles nervously, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "The Voidborn adapt to our weapons faster than we can develop new ones," continued Ambassador Kalara. "They absorb our defeated ships into their fleet, somehow converting our technology to serve their purposes. Our scientists cannot explain how they do this so quickly." Lisa leaned close to Carter and whispered, "Sir, the casualty numbers are getting worse every day. At this rate, they will reach the inner systems within 2 years." Carter nodded slightly, but kept his expression neutral. He had been studying the Voidborn tactics for months, ever since the first reports of their attacks reached human space. What he saw in their patterns disturbed him more than the other species realized. The enemy was not just conquering territories. They were learning, testing, and preparing for something bigger. The Altarian representative, Ambassador Thylan, rose from his seat and asked for permission to speak. His crystal features caught the chamber lights as he moved to the speaking area. "Perhaps we should consider evacuation protocols for the outer colonies. We could establish defensive positions around the core worlds and make our stand there." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. Many species had already begun moving their populations away from the advancing Voidborn fleet. The idea of retreat was becoming more popular as each defensive line failed to hold. General Thrak of the Korthani Empire slammed his scaled fist on his delegation's table, making a loud sound that echoed through the chamber. "My people do not run from any enemy," he growled, his yellow eyes flashing with anger. "We have never retreated in 1,000 years of warfare. Your people are dying by the millions, just like all of ours." Ambassador Thylan replied coldly. "Pride will not stop the Voidborn advance. We need practical solutions, not empty bravado." The argument that followed was familiar to Carter. He had heard the same debates in dozens of previous sessions. The military leaders wanted to fight, the diplomats wanted to negotiate, and the scientists wanted more time to study the enemy. Meanwhile, entire worlds continued to fall. Carter studied the tactical displays showing Voidborn movements across the galaxy. Red markers indicated conquered systems, creating an expanding wave of destruction that seemed unstoppable. The enemy moved in predictable patterns, but those patterns revealed something troubling. They were not just taking territory. They were probing galactic defenses, learning how each species fought, and cataloging their capabilities. Lisa noticed his concentration and quietly activated her datapad to share information with him. The Human Intelligence Services had been monitoring galactic communications and analyzing battle reports. What they found suggested that the current invasion was not the main threat. It was reconnaissance for something much larger. "The Kepler defense line will hold," declared Admiral Jen of the United Fleet, his insect-like features showing confidence. "We have positioned our strongest forces there. The Voidborn will not break through. Carter almost smiled at the Admiral's certainty. The Kepler line was indeed impressive, a chain of fortress worlds equipped with the most advanced weapons the galaxy could produce. But the Voidborn had broken through impressive defenses before, and each time they learned more about galactic military capabilities. As the session continued, Carter noticed something that the other representatives seemed to miss. Every strategy they discussed had been used before in their long history of small conflicts and limited wars. The galaxy had known relative peace for over 2,000 years, with only minor disputes between neighboring systems. None of these species had faced a true existential threat in living memory. The Voidborn were different. They showed no interest in negotiation, no respect for surrender, and no mercy for civilians. They fought with a ruthlessness that the galactic species could not match because their cultures had evolved beyond such brutality. What they saw as their greatest achievement, the development of civilized warfare with rules and limitations, had become their greatest weakness. "We need new approaches," said the representative from the Pelican Cluster, a small aquatic being whose water-filled suit bubbled as he spoke. "The old methods are not working against this enemy." Carter finally stood up, catching Lisa by surprise. She looked at him with concern, knowing that he rarely spoke during these sessions. The human delegation had maintained a low profile since joining the council, preferring to observe and learn rather than offer opinions that might be dismissed. "Ambassador Carter," acknowledged Chancellor Vex, the elderly leader of the council. "Does humanity wish to contribute to this discussion?" All eyes in the chamber turned toward the human section. Carter could feel the mixture of curiosity and skepticism from the other delegations. Most of them wondered what the newest and least advanced species could possibly offer in this crisis. "Not at this time, Chancellor," Carter replied politely. "We are still studying the situation." The session continued for several more hours, but no new solutions emerged. The same strategies were proposed and debated while the Voidborn advance continued unchecked. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Carter remained in his seat deep in thought. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "when will we tell them what we really think?" Carter looked at the empty chamber, then at the tactical displays still showing the expanding red zones of Voidborn control. "When they are ready to hear it," he said. "Right now, they still believe their way of fighting can work. They need to understand that civilization and survival sometimes require different approaches. The war was about to teach the galaxy a lesson that humanity had learned long ago. Sometimes to preserve what is good, you must embrace what is necessary." 3 days after the emergency council session, Carter found himself deep beneath the council chambers in the vast digital archives. The underground facility stretched for kilometers in every direction, housing the complete military and cultural histories of every member species. He had requested access under the guise of researching human integration protocols, but his real purpose was far more urgent. Lisa sat at the terminal next to his, scrolling through thousands of documents while occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. They had been working for hours, analyzing battle reports, tactical manuals, and warfare doctrines from across the galaxy. What they discovered was both fascinating and deeply troubling. "Sir, look at these casualty figures from the Altarian-Xanthari border conflict 50 years ago," Lisa said, pointing to her screen. "Total deaths over 3 years of fighting, 837 beings, for an entire war between 2 major powers." Carter paused his own research to look at her findings. The numbers seemed impossibly low compared to human conflicts. What were they fighting over? Mining rights to a small asteroid field. The war ended when both sides agreed to share the resources equally. Lisa pulled up more files. Every conflict I can find follows the same pattern: limited objectives, minimal casualties, negotiated settlements. Carter returned to his own research, diving deeper into the military histories. The galaxy had indeed known remarkable peace for over 2,000 years. Wars were rare. Brief affairs settled through diplomacy or limited military action. Combat followed strict rules of engagement that prioritized the protection of civilian populations and infrastructure. Honor codes prevented the use of certain weapons or tactics that might cause excessive damage. They have forgotten how to fight. A real war, Carter muttered, reading a tactical manual that devoted more pages to proper surrender protocols than to offensive strategies. These are not battle plans. These are elaborate games with rules that both sides agree to follow. The Void-born battle reports told a completely different story. The enemy showed no regard for civilian casualties, no respect for surrender attempts, and no hesitation to use any weapon or tactic that might give them advantage. They fought with the single-minded goal of complete victory, regardless of cost. Carter opened a new file containing detailed analysis of Void-born tactics. The enemy adapted their strategies based on each encounter, learning from every battle, and adjusting their approach accordingly. They had faced the honor-bound forces of the Korthani Empire and quickly learned to exploit their predictable attack patterns. Against the defensive-minded Altarians, they had developed techniques to turn fortifications into traps for their defenders. "Lisa, pull up the human military archives from Earth," Carter said. "I want to compare something." Lisa activated her secure connection to the human databases. Within moments, thousands of years of human warfare appeared on her screen. The contrast was immediate and stark. Where galactic conflicts measured casualties in hundreds, human wars counted deaths in millions. Where alien battles lasted months, human conflicts stretched across years or decades. The Battle of Stalingrad alone killed more people than the galaxy has lost in warfare over the past century, Lisa observed quietly. And that was just one battle in one war. Carter pulled up records from humanity's most devastating conflicts. World War II had consumed 70 million lives over 6 years. The 30 Years' War had depopulated entire regions of Europe. Ancient conflicts had seen armies march across continents, leaving destruction in their wake that lasted for generations. But alongside the terrible costs, Carter saw something else in the human records. Ingenuity born from desperation. Tactics that seemed unthinkable to civilized minds but proved devastatingly effective. The willingness to sacrifice everything in the name of survival. His personal communicator chimed with an incoming secure transmission from Earth. Carter activated the privacy shield around their workstation before accepting the call. "Admiral." Kate Sullivan appeared on the small screen, her weathered face showing the strain of recent days. "John, I hope you have good news for me," she said without preamble. "The situation here is getting worse by the hour." "What is the current status, Admiral?" "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected void-born scout ships probing the outer edges of human territory. They are testing our response times and cataloging our defensive positions. Intelligence estimates we have 18 months before they launch a full assault on our colonies." Carter felt his stomach tighten. "What does Earth Command recommend?" "We have run extensive simulations based on all available data about Void-born capabilities and tactics. John, if they attack human space with the same force they used against the Outer Rim, we cannot hold them. Our technology is decades behind the galactic standard, and our fleet is a fraction of the size they have already defeated." Lisa leaned closer to hear the conversation. Admiral Sullivan noticed her presence and nodded in acknowledgement before continuing. "But our analysis has revealed something that the other species seem to have missed. The Void-born are not just conquering territory, they are conducting systematic reconnaissance. Every battle teaches them more about galactic military capabilities, political structures, and defensive strategies." "You think this is preparation for something larger," Carter said. "We are certain of it. The current invasion force represents only a fraction of what they could deploy, based on the size of the regions they control. This is a probing attack designed to gather intelligence for the real invasion." Carter looked at the tactical displays showing void-born advancement across the galaxy. The red markers indicating fallen systems formed a clear pattern when viewed over time. The enemy was not simply expanding, they were methodically testing different types of defenses and cataloging the responses. "Admiral, in your assessment, what would it take to stop them?" Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. "Total war, John. The kind of warfare that the galaxy has not seen in 2 millennia. No rules, no limitations, no concern for anything except complete victory. The galactic species would need to fight like humanity did during our darkest hours." After the transmission ended, Carter sat in silence, staring at the data surrounding him. The archives contained detailed records of every atrocity humans had committed in the name of survival. Chemical weapons that poisoned entire battlefields, tactics that deliberately targeted civilian populations, strategies that sacrificed hundreds of thousands of soldiers to achieve strategic objectives. "Sir," Lisa said quietly, "are we really going to suggest that the galaxy adopt our methods?" Carter thought of the peaceful species he had observed in the council chambers, beings who had spent centuries developing beyond the brutality that had defined human history. They had built something beautiful in their long peace, a civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect. "The Voidborn want to destroy everything they have built," he said finally. "The question is whether they are willing to temporarily become something they despise in order to preserve what they value." He looked at the human military files still displayed on his screen. Thousands of years of warfare, betrayal, and calculated cruelty, but also thousands of years of survival against impossible odds. "Prepare a comprehensive analysis of human tactical doctrine," Carter told Lisa. "Include everything from guerrilla warfare to weapons of mass destruction. The Council needs to understand what total war really means." The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes to remain civilized, you must first remember how to be savage. The emergency alert came at dawn, piercing through the quiet of the diplomatic quarters with its urgent tone. Carter rolled out of bed and activated his communication device to find Lisa already dressed and waiting in the corridor outside his room. Her face was pale with worry as she handed him a datapad containing the latest reports. "The Kepler defense line has fallen," she said simply. Carter felt his blood turn cold as he read the details. The massive fortress system that Admiral Zhen had declared unbreakable had been overrun in less than 6 hours. 12 heavily fortified worlds, equipped with the most advanced weapons the galaxy could produce, had been consumed by the Voidborn. Advance. The enemy had not only broken through the defenses but had somehow turned the fortress weapons against their own defenders. "How many casualties?" Carter asked as they hurried toward the council chambers. "Preliminary estimates suggest 40 billion beings," Lisa replied. "The Voidborn did not just destroy the defenses, they absorbed everything. Ships, weapons, even the fortress structures themselves have been converted to serve their fleet." The council chamber was in chaos when they arrived. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other in their native languages, while translators struggled to keep up with the flood of panicked communications. Emergency broadcasts from across the galaxy filled the air with reports of refugee fleets, collapsing defensive lines, and systems going dark as the Voidborn advance accelerated. Chancellor Vex stood at the central podium, his ancient features showing strain as he called for order. "The situation requires immediate action," he announced once the noise died down. "We must evacuate all remaining outer territories and establish new defensive positions around the core worlds." "Evacuation will not save us," General Thrak growled, from his position in the Korthani section. "Every time we retreat, they grow stronger. They learn from our weapons and add our technology to their own. Running only delays the inevitable." Ambassador Thylon of the Altarians rose to respond. "Then what do you suggest, General? Your warrior culture has produced some of our finest military leaders, yet none of them have found a way to stop this enemy. Perhaps it is time to admit that conventional warfare cannot defeat them." The debate that followed was familiar, but more desperate than before. The same arguments were repeated with increasing urgency, while the tactical displays showed red markers spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Carter watched the patterns of Voidborn movement and saw confirmation of his worst fears. The enemy was not just conquering, they were systematically dismantling galactic civilization piece by piece. Ambassador Kalara of the Zenthari Federation took the floor next, her 6 arms shaking as she spoke. "Our best scientists, our greatest military minds, our most advanced technology, nothing slows them down. They adapt to everything we try. They learn faster than we can innovate." "We need a miracle," said the representative from the Pelican cluster, his aquatic suit bubbling with agitation. "Something they have never seen before. A strategy so unexpected that they cannot adapt to it." Carter felt the weight of every gaze in the chamber as dozens of species looked around desperately for answers that none of them possessed. The reality was finally settling in that their way of fighting was not just ineffective, but counterproductive. Every battle taught the Voidborn more about galactic capabilities while accomplishing nothing except adding to their strength. That was when Carter finally stood. The chamber fell silent as he rose from his seat in the human delegation area. Lisa looked at him with concern, knowing that what he was about to say would change everything. The other representatives watched with curiosity mixed with skepticism, wondering what the newest and least advanced species could possibly contribute to their crisis. "Honored representatives," Carter said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Humanity requests permission to address the council." Chancellor Vex hesitated for a moment before nodding. "The human delegation may speak." Carter walked slowly to the central podium, feeling the attention of 47 species focused on him. He activated the display system and loaded the files that he and Lisa had prepared over the past few days. The screen filled with images and data that most of the council had never seen before. "My fellow beings," Carter began, "you have spoken much about the Voidborn advantages. Their technology, their numbers, their ability to adapt to our strategies, but you have not identified their greatest weakness." "And what would that be, human?" General Thrak asked with barely concealed skepticism. "They fight like you do." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Representatives leaped to their feet, shouting protests in multiple languages. The Altarian delegation demanded an apology for what they saw as an insult to their honor. The Korthani delegation took it as a challenge to their warrior traditions. Carter raised his hand for silence and waited until the chamber quieted down. "I meant no insult to any species here," he continued. "You fight with honor, with codes of conduct, with respect for life and civilization. These are admirable qualities that have given this galaxy 2,000 years of peace and prosperity." "Then explain your meaning," Chancellor Vex demanded. Carter activated his display, showing imagery from human military history. Ancient siege, warfare where armies poisoned enemy water supplies, naval battles where submarines targeted civilian shipping, aerial bombardments that reduced entire cities to rubble, nuclear weapons capable of destroying all life on a planet. "The Voidborn fight total war," Carter said quietly. "They have no rules, no mercy, no limits on what they will do to achieve victory. They fight to completely destroy their enemies, not to achieve limited political objectives. And in all your long peace you have forgotten how to match that level of commitment." The chamber was silent now, the implications of his words sinking in slowly. Several representatives looked physically ill as they processed what the human was suggesting. "But we have not forgotten," Carter continued. "Humanity has spent most of our history perfecting the art of warfare. We know every brutal tactic, every ruthless strategy, every way to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. We understand what it means to fight when the only alternative is extinction." Ambassador Kalara spoke through her translator, her voice barely audible. "Are you suggesting that we abandon our principles, that we become like them?" Carter looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, seeing fear and disgust in many of their faces. These were beings who had evolved beyond the savagery that had defined human development. They had built something beautiful in their civilization, something worth preserving. "I am suggesting that sometimes, to preserve what is good, you must be willing to do what is necessary," he said. "The Voidborn understand only one language, absolute force applied without mercy or hesitation. Until you learn to speak that language, you will continue to lose everything you have built." The silence stretched on as every being in the chamber contemplated what the human was offering. They could continue fighting their civilized war and watch their civilization die, or they could embrace methods that violated everything they believed about proper conduct. "What exactly are you proposing?" Chancellor Vex asked finally. Carter smiled grimly, knowing that the galaxy was about to change forever. "We are proposing to teach you how to win." The private meeting room deep within the council complex was much smaller than the main chamber, but the tension felt even heavier. Only the senior military commanders and Carter's human delegation were present for this classified discussion. Admiral Jen of the United Fleet sat directly across from Carter, his compound eyes reflecting the dim lighting as he studied the human ambassador with new interest. General Thrak occupied a corner of the room, his massive reptilian frame making the furniture look fragile by comparison. The Korthani warrior had been unusually quiet since Carter's speech to the full council, and his silence was more unsettling than his usual aggressive posturing. Ambassador Thylon represented the Altarian military command, his crystalline features showing none of the usual diplomatic politeness. "Explain to us exactly what humanity is proposing," Admiral Zhen said without any preliminary discussion. "Your speech to the council suggested methods that go against everything our civilizations have built over thousands of years." Carter activated a portable display unit that Lisa had prepared, showing the current tactical situation across the galaxy. Red zones indicating void-borne control now covered nearly a third of known space, with the enemy advance accelerating as they absorbed more resources and technology from conquered systems. "The void-borne advance follows predictable patterns," Carter began. "They probe defensive positions, analyze the responses, adapt their technology to counter specific threats, then overwhelm with superior numbers and converted weapons. Your forces have been responding defensively, trying to hold fixed positions while protecting civilian populations and infrastructure. As any civilized military force would do," General Thrak interjected, though his tone suggested he was beginning to question that assumption. "Which is exactly why you are losing," Carter replied bluntly. "Defensive warfare only succeeds when the enemy has limited resources, political constraints, or strategic objectives other than total destruction. The Voidborn have none of those limitations." Lisa stepped forward and activated a new section of the display, showing detailed analysis of human military doctrine that had been adapted for galactic-scale warfare. Human tactical philosophy is built around three principles that your militaries have abandoned: asymmetric warfare, total resource commitment, and acceptable loss ratios. Admiral Zhen leaned forward, his insect-like features showing careful attention. "Define acceptable loss ratios." Carter's expression grew serious as he considered how to explain concepts that were foreign to galactic thinking. During World War II, humanity fought a global conflict that lasted 6 years. We accepted the deaths of over 70 million people, both military and civilian. Entire cities were destroyed. Industrial centers were bombed into rubble. We poisoned our own environment with war production and tested weapons that could have ended our species. The alien officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly struggling to process numbers that exceeded their total casualties over centuries of limited warfare. "But we won," Carter continued, "because when facing extinction, you commit everything. You sacrifice whatever is necessary. You become whatever you need to become to ensure survival." General Thrak shifted in his seat, his warrior instincts responding to concepts that his civilized mind found disturbing. "What specifically would you have us do?" Lisa pulled up classified human military documents that had been declassified for this presentation. Biological warfare designed to target void-born physiology specifically. Kamikaze attacks using automated vessels to overwhelm their adaptive defenses before they can respond. False flag operations to make them waste resources responding to phantom threats. Psychological warfare designed to disrupt their hive mind coordination systems. These tactics would require us to sacrifice many of our own forces, Admiral Zhen observed quietly. "Yes," Carter said without hesitation. "That is what real war costs. The Voidborn are willing to lose entire fleets if it advances their strategic position. Until you match that level of commitment, you will continue to lose ground." Ambassador Thylon spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "Your proposals would turn us into something we have spent millennia evolving beyond. We would become the monsters we defeated in our own ancient past." Carter nodded slowly, understanding the moral weight of what he was asking. "Every species in this room evolved from predators. You all have the capacity for violence and ruthlessness. You have simply chosen to suppress those instincts in favor of civilization. But the choice you face now is simple. Temporarily embrace what you were, or permanently lose what you have become." The room fell silent as the implications settled in. These military leaders had spent their careers learning how to fight limited wars with minimal casualties and clear political objectives. What Carter was describing was something completely different. Warfare as an existential struggle where survival justified any method. What does humanity gain from this arrangement? Admiral Zhen asked, "Why would you offer to teach us these methods when you could simply remain neutral and avoid the conflict entirely?" Carter smiled grimly. "Because neutrality is not an option. Our intelligence analysis indicates that the Voidborn will reach human space within 18 months regardless of what happens here. We can either fight them in our own territory with whatever scraps remain after they consume the rest of the galaxy, or we can fight them here and now using your superior numbers and technology combined with our tactical expertise." General Thrak leaned forward, his yellow eyes fixed on Carter. "You would make us all killers." "No," Carter replied. "We would make you survivors. There is a difference, though the line between them can be very thin during wartime." Lisa activated another section of their presentation, showing projected casualty figures for various strategic scenarios. If current trends continue, the Voidborn will achieve total galactic conquest within 5 years. Total estimated casualties, 8 trillion beings. If we implement human tactical doctrines immediately, we project a 40% chance of ultimate victory with estimated casualties of 2 trillion beings over 3 years of intensive warfare. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. Every being in the room was calculating the cost of action versus inaction, weighing the value of their principles against the survival of their species. "These methods you describe, Ambassador," Thailand said slowly. "Would they change us permanently? Would we be able to return to our previous ways after the war?" Carter was quiet for a long moment, considering how to answer honestly. "War changes everyone who fights it. Humanity lost much of our innocence during our conflicts, but we also gained something valuable, the knowledge that we could survive anything, that when faced with complete destruction we would not break." He looked around the room at the assembled officers, seeing the weight of decision in their faces. "You have built something beautiful in this galaxy. 2,000 years of peace, cooperation, and progress. The question you must answer is simple. What are you willing to become to preserve what you have built?" Admiral Zhen was the first to speak. "If we agree to this arrangement, humanity would take operational control of all military forces? Under Council oversight," Carter confirmed. "We would not become your rulers, but we would become your teachers. You have the technology and resources to implement these strategies. You simply lack the cultural framework to conceive them." The meeting continued for several more hours as the military leaders grappled with concepts that challenged everything they believed about proper warfare. When they finally adjourned, no decisions had been made, but everyone understood that the galaxy stood at a crossroads between civilization and survival. The final council session was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from every member species packed the great chamber, while billions more watched live transmissions across the galaxy. The question before them would either save their civilization or destroy everything they believed about themselves. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows on faces filled with fear and uncertainty as Chancellor Vex called the session to order. "We gather today to vote on the human proposal for operational military control," Chancellor Vex announced, his ancient voice carrying the weight of 2,000 years of galactic peace. "Before we proceed, each delegation may speak their final position." The debate that followed revealed the deep divisions that Carter's proposal had created. The Altarian delegation spoke first, with Ambassador Thailand standing tall despite the obvious strain on his crystalline features. "My people have built our entire society around the principles of peaceful resolution and limited conflict. What the humans propose goes against everything we have achieved since our own dark ages ended 3,000 years ago." The Zenthari Federation followed, with Ambassador Kalara's 6 arms trembling as she addressed the chamber. "We fear that embracing these methods will change us into something we no longer recognize. How do we preserve our culture while abandoning our values?" But other voices spoke of harder realities. The representative from the mining consortium, whose worlds had been among the first to fall, stood with barely controlled anger. "My people are dead or enslaved. Every day we debate, more systems fall. Perhaps it is time to value survival over philosophical purity. Carter watched from his position in the human delegation as species after species struggled with the impossible choice. Some spoke of honor and tradition, others of necessity and survival. The Korthani delegation surprised everyone when General Thrak himself requested permission to speak. Warriors know that victory sometimes requires distasteful actions, the reptilian general said, his yellow eyes fixed on Carter. The humans offer us tools that we have forgotten how to use. Perhaps it is time to remember that survival is the first duty of any species. The smaller species were divided along different lines. Those whose territories bordered void-borne space supported the human proposal with desperate urgency, while those in the protected core world spoke of maintaining their principles. The reality of geography had become a major factor in moral philosophy. During a brief recess, Lisa approached Carter with updates from Earth. Admiral Sullivan reports that void-borne scouts have begun probing human defensive positions around the outer colonies. They estimate we have less than a year before the main assault begins. Carter nodded grimly. What about the tactical preparations? Earth Command has been developing new strategies based on the galactic situation. Some of the weapon systems they are designing. Lisa paused, looking uncomfortable. They make our historical conflicts look restrained by comparison. When the session resumed, Chancellor Vex called for final statements before the vote. Carter had not planned to speak again, but as he watched the faces around the chamber, he realized that many representatives still did not fully understand what they were choosing between. Honored delegates, Carter said as he stood, I request permission to address the council one final time. The chamber fell silent as he walked to the central podium. I have listened to your debates about honor, tradition, and moral principles. These are admirable concerns that show the greatness of what you have built here, but I fear that some of you still do not understand the nature of the choice before you. He activated the display system, showing real-time tactical information from the front lines. While we have been debating, the Voidborn have consumed 3 more star systems. 46 billion beings have died in the past week alone. The enemy is not slowing down to consider moral philosophy. The images showed scenes of devastation that many council members had not seen before. Entire worlds reduced to lifeless husks. Refugee fleets fleeing through space with nowhere safe to go. The systematic destruction of everything the galaxy had built over millennia. You speak of preserving your values, Carter continued. But what values can exist if there is no one left to practice them? You worry about becoming monsters, but monsters are what survive when civilization fails. Ambassador Kalara interrupted through her translator. What happens after the war? If we become what you describe, how do we return to what we were? Carter was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. I cannot promise that you will return unchanged. War leaves scars on everyone who fights it. But I can promise that if you do not fight this war with everything you have, there will be no after to worry about. He looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, seeing the weight of impossible decisions in their faces. The Voidborn have already made their choice about what kind of beings they will be. The only question remaining is what kind of beings you will choose to be in response. Chancellor Vex called for the vote as Carter returned to his seat. The process was conducted in complete silence, with each delegation casting their decision, electronically. The results appeared on the great display screens for all to see as the votes were tallied. The final count showed 31 species voting in favor of the human proposal, with 16 opposed. Several smaller species had abstained, unable to make such a momentous decision. The chamber remained silent as the implications settled in. By majority decision, Chancellor Vex announced, his voice echoing through the stunned assembly. Operational control of galactic military forces is transferred to the human delegation under the oversight of the Galactic Council. May the universe have mercy on us all. As the session ended and representatives filed out in shocked silence, Carter remained at the podium. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on him like a physical force. The galaxy had just voted to trust humanity with their survival, despite knowing what that trust would cost them. Lisa approached him quietly. Sir, are you ready for this responsibility? Carter looked at the tactical displays still showing the advancing void-born forces. Trillions of lives now depended on humanity's ability to teach the galaxy how to fight a war they had never imagined possible. The peaceful species around them would have to learn methods that violated everything they believed about civilized behavior. No, he said honestly. But being ready and being necessary are different things. The galaxy has forgotten how to be savage when survival demands it. We never forgot, and now that memory might be the only thing that saves us all. That night, secure transmissions went out to every human colony and Earth itself. The message was simple but carried enormous implications. Humanity's role in galactic affairs had changed forever. They were no longer the newest members seeking acceptance, but the species tasked with teaching the galaxy how to survive its darkest hour. The Voidborn had awakened something they did not expect when they threatened human space. They had forced the galaxy to remember that sometimes to preserve civilization, you must first remember how to be uncivilized, and humanity had never forgotten that lesson. Carter stood at his window that night looking out at the stars where billions of beings were preparing for a war unlike anything their species had ever imagined. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, humanity would start teaching the galaxy what total war really meant.